What's up, guys? Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Empowered Conversations. I'm so excited to speak with my guest today. She's a good friend of mine. Her name is Jo Sutton. And first, before I introduce her and bring her on, I just want to send out another huge, heartfelt thank you to everyone who is continuing to vote for me today for the next 12 hours. The hero votes are 2 for 1. So if you've wanted to invest in the charity Feeding America, today is one of the biggest and best days to do that, because it helps me, it helps the charity as well. It's a phenomenal charity helping to feed people who need it. And again, just thank you so much, and thank you so much for everybody that's joining me today, and my girlfriend Jo Sutton. So Katie is an energy medicine teacher. She's an empathic healer and spiritual wayshower. She supports her clients on their personal path to wholeness and fulfillment. Katie's clients span a broad demographic spectrum and are united in their search for solutions to their life's challenges. After investing more than a decade in a combination of research, natural remedies to her own personal health concerns, her formal study in undergraduate and graduate programs at the Boulder Psychic Institute, and certifications in both professional and wellness coaching, Katie founded Zen Within Academy. During her individual healing sessions, workshops, speaking engagements, retreats, and online programs and events, she intuitively crafts an alchemy of meditation, breath work, energy medicine, and channeled teachings from her guides and higher self to awaken unity consciousness. I'm so excited to speak with her about unity consciousness and the importance of that. Her deep healing for her clients and for her students. Now, I personally have been to numerous of her workshops. I've worked with her one-on-one, and let me tell you what an amazing, beautiful, transformative experience it is. All right, guys, help me in welcoming, everybody do a drum roll, for my girlfriend, Jo Sutton.
Hi.
What's up, Katie? Welcome. Hello, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
You're so welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Mm-hmm.
Jo is literally probably definitely one of the most grounded people that I know, and she's one of the last workshops I did with you and Josh, I was at the end, you had these oils that you had, that you had blessed in certain areas. And I was like, which one should I do? Both of y'all at the same time went grounding, the grounding oil. Yeah.
So we need lots of high energy in this world too. So everybody has their place.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, thank you. So Katie Jo, I know you, I've known you for several years now. You're a great friend, and I know your story, but I want you to tell my audience just a little bit about your background and where you were, before you started this type of work, this type of realm of being in the world.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I started where many people are, which is in the corporate space. When I was growing up, I was always a very sensitive kid. And now looking back, I realize how sensitive I actually was and how much I turned down. And so when I was little, I spent more time with animals than I did with people. And as an empath, I now realize why that is. But as I got older, I really wanted to move into technology, and I really wanted to be CEO of a technology company. That was my goal when I was a kid. And so after I went to college, I started working in the financial services space at Bank of America and a few other places. And I worked in that space for about 12 or 13 years. Mm-hmm. And what happened right away, as soon as I went into the corporate world, is that I got sick. Within about maybe 8 months, so I was just 22 years old, I got shingles. I started getting migraines. I started having autoimmune disorders at 24. And basically what started to happen is that I went in the traditional medical route to try to solve all of that. and realized very quickly that it wasn't the solution. And
Mhm.
so while I was still working in the corporate space, I started to expand my knowledge of intuition and energy medicine, and I started seeking. So I basically was seeking to heal myself.
Mhm.
And through that seeking, I landed after about that 13-year period in a role of bringing that knowledge and bringing that information forward to others. And so, in about, I think it was maybe around 2015,
Mhm.
I went on vacation to Boulder, Boulder, Colorado. And I was having low back pain at the time. And we happened into this little place on the street called Boulder Psychic Institute. It was right downtown.
Mhm.
And I was just kind of curious. And I sat down for a healing. And in 15 minutes, my back pain was gone for 3 months. And some of the things that the woman said to me when she started working with me really got my attention. And so I started studying there. And so I spent 3 years studying psychic healing, energy medicine, all kinds of things really deeply, and moved through a lot of growth while I was still working in my corporate space.
Mhm.
And what I like to say about energy medicine and being aware of your energy body and your intuition and all those things is it just makes life easier. And
Mhm.
so I started to be able to manage my health conditions through my energy body while I was still in a very stressful, very, very stressful work environment.
Mhm.
And then in 2017, right when I had hired a business coach and had a 2-year plan to build out Zen Within Academy, I got laid off. The week that that happened, that I hired my business coach, I got laid off. And the universe said, okay, she's ready. She hired a business coach. And I did some contracting work for a little bit. And then I started this company and started seeing clients. And now I see about 20 clients a week. And I lead 4 or 5 classes every quarter. And we do workshops and retreats and all kinds of wonderful things. So that's how I got here, all from health
Yes.
stuff.
Speaking of that, I remember when I was in the pursuit of pharmaceutical sales, I relate that to your corporate world experience. And because I had been on the health and wellness journey for several years at this point in time, shoot, almost 15.
Mm.
And I didn't understand that I was pursuing something that was not in line with my core values and what true health and wellness was.
Yeah.
And I would literally make it within an eighth of a hair of a half of a second to so many job offers, and then it wouldn't happen. And I'm like,
Mm.
what? But it was because I was pursuing something that was not in line. And it sounds like, you know, you you know what the core of you was throughout your entire childhood, and you were then pursuing something that was the dichotomous opposite, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
redundant term
Mm-hmm.
of who you are. And so
Yes.
it's as though those, but then again, nothing is without the silver lining and the gift in our life. And it's like those physical ailments that started to manifest also sent you on that path to where
Yeah.
you are now. So real quick, explain to my audience what an empath is.
Okay, I'll do my best. So, simply put, an empath is someone who has what's called clairsentience.
Mm-hmm.
Clairsentience is when we can feel what other people are feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so the example that I always give is that I can walk into a room, and if there's 10 people in that room, I can zero in on each of them and tell you exactly what emotions they're carrying in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And for pretty much my whole life, I didn't realize that's what was happening. And the assumption was that everything that I felt was mine. And so
Mm-hmm.
the most empowering thing that has ever happened to me in this lifetime was when I sat down in class and my teacher said, 90% of what you're feeling every day isn't yours. And it was like somebody had let the air out of an overinflated balloon. And I remember crying because there
Wow.
was there was this feeling of overwhelm for me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because recently I went to the eye doctor and I had to park in the Bank of America parking garage to go there. As soon as I went into the parking garage, I could feel that familiar feeling. And
Mm-hmm.
it feels like a tightness in the body, a tightness in the chest for me, where what was happening for me is because I was so sensitive and I could feel what everybody around me was feeling, I would shut it down. And the fastest
Mm-hmm.
way for us to shut down our empathy and feeling other people's stuff is to close our heart chakra. which is
Mm-hmm.
right in the center of our chest.
Mm-hmm.
But the negative part of that is that increases our stress level. It actually
Mm-hmm.
eliminates the energy flow in our body. And then we limit the amount of source energy and higher self and knowing that we can bring in. And then that makes our path even harder. And so
Right.
pretty much as I've been on this healing journey, even today, I'm still working on, okay, it's safe for me to feel, but I also can recognize as soon as somebody else's stuff is in my space and be like, oh, that's not mine. And as soon as I bring that awareness forward, I'm able to release that and come back into my center. And I
Right.
think that everybody on this planet is empathic. I think that
Absolutely.
we've just turned it off.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, I work with a lot of kids these days.
Mm-hmm.
And when
Oh,
I
I
work
love
with
that.
children, they're always very, very empathic. I can work in their field and not say anything to them, and they can tell me exactly what I'm doing because they can
Yeah.
feel it. But we're conditioned in our society that it's not safe to feel, or it's not okay to feel, it's not okay to
Mm-hmm.
have emotions. And so we start to turn all those abilities off. And so, one of the most important things that I feel like I do on this planet today is help people reclaim their empathy and reclaim their other gifts, their intuition,
Mm-hmm.
their knowing, because we all have it to a certain degree.
And that goes along with the unity consciousness.
Mm-hmm. It does. Yeah.
Excuse me, I just had a notification.
It's okay.
So talk a little bit about unity consciousness and what that actually means.
Sure. So, unity consciousness, as I define it, is the understanding that everything is connected and we are all one, and that everybody around us is a mirror of who we are. And
Yes.
so that's a really wonderful sentence, but to live it is very, very different. And in
Mm-hmm.
practical terms, to live unity consciousness and to live that understanding is to be able to sit across from somebody who has differing opinions than you do.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if we look at what's happened in the last year and a half, we could all use a little bit more unity consciousness on this
Yes.
planet because of
Yes.
all of the dualistic and polarized things that have come forward. And one of the reasons why all of that polarity and all of that arguing is happening is because the louder that polarity gets, eventually we will all slam back to center into unity consciousness. But
Right.
what we're learning as a collective right now is how to sit across from somebody who has those differing opinions and still see their humanity and still
Yes.
see that even though they might have voted for somebody else or made different choices, that there's still like for like there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I'm constantly trying to remind people of as well when they come into session with me, is that when I sit and hold space for them, I can see their unique essence and their truth. But there's so many things that they've put on themselves,
Right.
programming and beliefs and energetic stuff that they're
Mm-hmm.
carrying because they want to fit in.
Right.
And so unity consciousness, and this is really important, is not about everybody being the same. It's actually the opposite.
Right.
It's about everybody being in their unique autonomy and in their uniqueness, but also having an understanding that there's commonality across and we can all coexist.
Abso-freaking-lutely. And I always like to say that we all have a pair of shoes that we walk in, and no one's feet fits in another person's pair of shoes. And it's easy to say or it's easy to want to say you're wrong or you're stupid because you think differently or you say something differently, but it's not. They are speaking and thinking from their own realm of existence, from their own reality. And it's exactly what you're saying is unity is that, I see you.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't lived my experience. I haven't lived yours. That's why our mindset and our heart set are, are different. At this point in
Yeah.
time, doesn't mean that things can't change.
Yeah, and over the last year and a half, it's interesting because unity consciousness was always about this idea of community and autonomy and all of that for
Mm-hmm.
me. And then what started to develop in the last year in my teachings is that it's actually we need to find unity within, and that looks like us balancing our masculine and our feminine energy
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because we all
absolutely.
carry both. And so it's this balance of being and doing. And
Mm-hmm.
when we really master that, what happens is we drop into this beautiful place of presence within us
Yeah.
that allows us to be present with whatever's happening outside of us and not get triggered or go into the chaos of it and go into reaction mode. And so my tagline for the business is unity consciousness starts with you. And so what that means is we need to anchor that within ourselves first and foremost.
Right. And it's when I came to the epiphany that everything was of itself, everything was one, was literally in my organic chemistry class during my, bachelor, obtaining bachelor's in biology. And remember just gazing up at the periodic table one day and going, everything that exists, which exists, all things that you can see, feel, hear, and touch, are different conglomerations of atoms from the periodic table. Hence, everything is of itself. Everything is one. And that was like a beautiful realization, so.
And I love that you found that through science, because I think there's this misperception that science or religion, like all these things are separate, but it's just a different language. Every single thing in the universe wants to be ordered. And so it just depends on what language you want to speak about it. So I have clients from all kinds of walks of life, all different backgrounds, and we can find commonality if we just learn to speak each other's language as well.
Yeah. Like the love language book.
Yeah, unconditional love is the unique frequency that we all carry that contains everything and all that is. So that's a beautiful place to start.
That's a beautiful, way of describing it as well. So, so tell me a little bit. So when I've experienced your workshops, gosh, they're just amazing. You and your husband, Josh, with the sound bowls. I purchased a yoni bowl recently, and I have my intentions written in the yoni bowl, and I sit there and I meditate, and but I've been to so many of your workshops when I was able to attend, and it's just riveting. Like, I've been in stressful situations or in a bad mood or feeling some sort of physical pain and gone to one of your workshops, and and it's just like it's like you can also transform the pain into something that's so light and free flowing, and that is exactly what I've experienced at your workshops. So talk a little bit about what you and Josh do at these beautiful workshops that you put on.
Yeah, I'm excited when we get back to doing more of them. We have one coming up in April now that things are starting to open up again. But when we're with people in person, we weave sound and energy medicine, and then I do some channeled teachings where I bring through a topic, basically. And so the way we set up our workshops is that they're normally wrapped around a particular topic, and then everybody receives exactly what they need within that energy. And so when I'm in session with somebody, whether it's in person or not, there's always an ability for me to drop in and scan what's happening in that person's energy field. Because I am so empathic, I've learned how to turn that sense on, and then my clairvoyance, which is seeing, so I can see certain blockages, and then my clairaudience, so that I can hear some messages for them. And so when I hold space for somebody, whether it's in a workshop or a private session, what often happens in the first session is that people start crying within the first 15 minutes because they're being seen.
You've seen me cry numerous times.
And it's this idea of there's not really a lot that they can hide from me, which is a vulnerable place, but I do it with compassion and love. And then when Josh is with me, we weave together the masculine and the feminine. So he's a shaman, so he's very good at holding space and going deep into the dark places for people. And I bring in the higher frequencies and the light and the unconditional love. And we weave those two things together when we're in workshops and sessions together. And then when I'm one-on-one, I have to channel that divine masculine on my own. Right. And so
I didn't even realize that's what you guys, I mean, he's just back there with the didgeridoo. It just feels so good. Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. And so we just kind of have this way of doing our work together and meeting each other as partners, but also holding that space for other people. And, one of my most favorite things is when people show up with something that's physical. And they have an understanding or a belief that they have to carry that forever, or that it's chronic and it's never going to go away. And then when we do sound healing, especially, or even just when I do an energy medicine session, we basically take that person's field and bring it into a vibrational resonance with something else. So
Yes.
whether that's a sound bowl, or if I'm doing energy medicine work on somebody and I'm channeling love into their body, I'm
Yes.
taking whatever they're vibrating at, which is a frequency, right? So maybe
Mm-hmm.
they're in a frequency of stress and pain, and we're
Mm-hmm.
shifting that within their cellular structure into something else. And so when they come up to me and they're like, oh, my back pain isn't here anymore, then what happens for them is they start to have a realization that that back pain isn't permanent.
Right.
And it opens a door for them to start to maybe explore and understand that everything actually starts on an energy level, and then it works its way into the physical body. So
Mm-hmm.
I was just explaining this to somebody yesterday,
Yeah.
that way outside in our field, and I keep going out of frame, so I'll try to just make it smaller, but our field's really big, like 6 feet wide.
Yeah.
Way outside in our field, when something triggers us or someone triggers us or something happens, like a trauma, like we get in a car accident or something,
Mm-hmm.
there's an energy disruption, right,
Mm-hmm.
out in our energy body. And then if that isn't dealt with, that trauma isn't processed, and we suppress the emotions, we suppress everything, eventually it makes its way in until it lands in our physical body as discomfort, stress, and dis-ease. And
Mm-hmm.
so if it gets to that level, we have to address all of the parts. So a lot of times people that have had trauma will come to me, and maybe they've been in therapy for like 10 years, right? They've
Mm-hmm.
been talking about this experience over and over again. And then eventually when they come to me, we talk about what happened, but I quickly shift them out of that story into, okay, what do you feel? Where do
Right.
you feel it in your body? What is stuck? And as we drop into that place, we can then holistically heal whatever has happened to them. And then they don't need to talk about it in therapy anymore. Right. And there's
Right.
nothing wrong with therapy. It's a beautiful thing, beautiful
Absolutely. Yeah.
practice that we need. But one of the things that I try to do is address it on all of the levels. So we have mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And so we are holistic beings. And so when people come to me, I try to work on all those levels at once.
Yes. And, I've worked with you one-on-one several times as well. And I will say, like there would be some sort of physical ailment that I was experiencing, or emotional ailment. And, through what you did while I was on the table, there would be a release. That doesn't mean that you're not going to think about that situation again.
Mm-hmm.
And also, and you can probably talk to this as well, is that sometimes, or often, not sometimes, oftentimes when something is showing up as a physical pain in our body, that is directly tied to some form of emotional distress.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how you call it, it's not disease, it's dis-ease
Mm-hmm.
in our bodies, and bringing that into balance, through energetic release.
Yeah, I had an experience yesterday morning where I woke up and I really felt crappy in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And within about 20 minutes of dropping in and working with the energy, I was able to shift it completely. And
Yes.
generally, what crappiness feels like for me in my body is congestion.
Mm-hmm.
And for my whole life, I was like the most congested kid you could have ever imagined. And so my parents took me, and then we got allergy shots and we did all of those things, and it never worked.
Ooh.
And then when I started studying energy medicine and started, really meditating and really working with my field, what I realized is when because I'm so empathic, if I pick up something from somebody else, meaning they're really sad and I drop into that sadness with them, if I don't deal with it on the energy level, the next morning I get up and I'm really congested. And so within just a couple of minutes of working in my field and using the tools and practices that I teach, I can clear that congestion almost instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a deep knowing in my being that anything that is physical can be also healed on the energetic level.
Absolutely.
Now, there are certain things, like if you break your arm or there's something really serious going on with you, that it also has to be dealt with in that really traditional physical way. But if we don't deal with the emotional and the energetic cause of it, then something else will pop up in its place.
Yes.
So that's why some people who maybe like have certain conditions and they are able to heal them or go into remission with them. Like I had Graves' disease as an example. I was able to heal that and go into remission from the symptoms, but I kept having trouble with my throat because what was really going on is I had silenced my voice. And when I started channeling and I started teaching and I started singing, all of that shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can always tell when I'm holding something and I'm holding something back because there's something going on with my throat. And so I have a deep knowing that at all levels, everything can be connected and everything is connected and can
Mm-hmm.
be affected through the energy practices that I teach. But what happens for people is that until that becomes true for them, it's not. And
Right.
so what I mean by that is, somebody can look at what I do and say, man, I'd love to do that. But if they're not willing to drop in and step into their energy body and start to feel into that and get into their emotions and have a belief in that, they're going to need to continue to do all the physical healing things that they need to do. But the
Right.
moment that that door swings open for them, which is kind of what I was talking about earlier, when they come to a workshop and their pain goes away
Mm-hmm.
and they start to realize, oh, I don't have to hold this. When that door opens, it's almost like a flood comes in of
Mm-hmm.
potential
Yeah.
where we can start to heal ourselves at a really deep
Yes.
level.
You don't know what you don't know until you are made aware.
Yeah. And you can't unring the awakened bell when you ring it.
No, exactly. And I keep getting cold chills speaking with you, because so much of this, or all of this, lands so fervently with me. And I always use the remedial, easy to understand explanation of, you don't, like, I never saw Nissan Altimas until I bought one. And now,
Yeah.
and then after you buy a certain type of car, now you start seeing them everywhere.
Yeah.
And that, and again, that is, the rigidity in thinking, or the existing in that state of mediocrity because of fear.
Yeah.
Because so many people will not open themselves up to everything that you were here discussing because of the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, there's no turning back. Once you have opened Pandora's box, whatever you want to call it, once the mind, there's a meme I love to share. Once the mind has been expanded, it does not contract back to the same malleable, way.
Well, and the example I always kid with and give with my husband is that, we used to be able to eat all kinds of stuff that we don't really eat right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was almost like as soon as my frequency shifted and I started to realize that and pay attention to what I was putting in my body, I don't have any tolerance. It's one of the reasons why I don't drink anymore, because my body doesn't agree with it, right? I don't have anything against it. My body just doesn't agree with it. And so it's kind of the same thing. When you awaken to the reality that you're more than just a physical being having physical pain, and you start to see that there's more components to you and you start to see yourself holistically, you can't unring that bell, but it's the best bell to ring.
And I would like to speak to that, because that's also in, not necessarily in just food, put it into your mouth, but it's also what you're feeding your soul, what you're feeding because I will say this, one of my favorite movies back in the early 90s, or whenever it came out, was The Crow. And I love the soundtrack. Like, I love, I still love, the soundtrack. But I tried to watch that movie a couple of years ago, and it was too violent.
Yeah.
Like, I was now so sensitive to the violence in that movie that I could watch over and over and over and over again. And I find myself, with watching stuff, particularly that is violent. I can't handle a certain type or a certain amount of violence when, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I enjoyed it.
I used to be like that.
Enjoyed the violence, but
enjoyed you like the movie, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I used to be like that with horror movies, because I was always a big Halloween and horror fan. And I'm super sensitive to it now. And it doesn't mean that I have any judgment of it. It's just it's not for me now. And with the pandemic and everything that we've moved through in the last year, what I'm noticing is that many people have been in trauma response, meaning like part of them has been shut down because of the uncertainty. And that has increased everybody's sensitivity level.
Yes.
And so a lot of times what we do to counteract that sensitivity is we numb it. And so for me as an empath, because I was always super sensitive and I didn't realize that that's what was going on, I would use sugar, because sugar is one of the quickest ways to deaden your senses and to mute your energy field. It actually, I think I read something the other day, impacts your immune system for like 4 hours after you have like a tablespoon of sugar or something like that.
Yes.
And so in your energy field, it does the same thing. It's kind of like putting a blanket over you. And so for people that I work with that have sugar addictions or are having trouble with, any kind of addiction, really, it's there
alcohol
to mute. Yeah, it's there to mute whatever's happening. And so if we can deal with the underlying cause that's creating the need to mute, then we don't have to have the addictive tendencies. And so, as we've all gotten sensitive and more sensitive this last year, I have people showing up on my couch who are waking up at the snap of a finger and having all these experiences because they finally were able to sit in their trauma in the last year and bring it to the surface and had to deal with it. And that's really generally what keeps us from feeling and being in tune with all the parts of ourselves, is all the trauma that we carry in our bodies.
And connecting with others that are different. And I just had to say something. Salmon, my cat, is literally on the couch and she's just watching. She's watching me, and it's adorable. I literally I'm listening to you, and I just took a picture. I'll share it later. But and I also wanted to speak to something that you did for me a few years ago. Well, it was actually my cat. Okay, hold on one second. Siobhan says, I really wish my ill friend was open to this. I know, Siobhan, and we've talked about this. That's my cooking show co-host, Food Therapy. Yes, and again, Siobhan, what Katie Jo is saying is that you don't know until you don't know, until you're aware. So exposing your friend without because I can't coach Tyler. You probably can't tell Josh.
No, it doesn't work.
Right. But you could say something and Tyler might go, oh yeah. Even though I might have said it 1,000 times, and vice versa. I could say something, oh yeah. But, and I have a Facebook user, so saying exactly, I don't know who that is, probably either somebody from my group, but anyway, so Siobhan is saying, I really wish my ill friend was open to this.
Yeah.
So speak to that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the hardest things about being awake to this stuff is holding space for people who are not.
Yeah.
And I taught a course in December and January called Creation Consciousness, and we're about to put it online soon. But the first teaching that I brought through in that course is that when you hold creation consciousness, which is this idea of instant manifestation and infinite potential, one of the hardest things is that you're going to hold that frequency and others around you are going to still be struggling, and you are going to have to hold that and be okay with that.
Cold chills.
Yeah. And so when it comes to somebody around us who is not open to seeing that maybe there's emotional trauma that's impacting them in a disease process, what I like to do is I like to tell people to close their eyes and imagine stepping back and giving that person some energetic space, and then see them surrounded in light and hold them in their highest light, that they are going to have the most easeful process available to them. And if you're into angels, which not everybody is, but what I also tell people when they feel like they just don't know what to do to help somebody is to delegate it to an angelic team and say, I'd like to hire an angel to help so-and-so understand that she has other options. Right. And sometimes that angel shows up in the form of a physical person who has just healed something that they're struggling with, and then it opens that door. And so as soon as we stop trying to fix and we start to just unconditionally love and see that person already healed, see them in their wholeness, there's this amazing energetic thing, and I can feel it in my body. So Siobhan, this is happening for you as I'm speaking it. Sorry, I might get teary. Yeah. I see people step back, and when they step back and we don't need to hold on to all that pain for them and we see them in their highest, we actually hold that template for them to step into that truth. Yeah. And that is the most beautiful thing we can do for our partners, our friends, our family, because a lot of times the people that I work with are the only person in their family who's doing any spiritual work or any of this stuff at all. And the hardest thing for them is to not be able to fix it for everybody in their life. And especially if you're an empath like me, it's really profound. You feel so deeply what's happening to the person across from you. And when you're an empath, it's uncomfortable to feel that. And so we often want to take that energy and pull it into our body and transmute it for them. But speaking from somebody who did that her whole life and got really sick, that's not what we want to do, right?
Right.
We want to try to hold a frequency as high as possible and hold love and invite them energetically to match it. And I know that that sounds pretty woo-woo maybe for some of your viewers, but trust me, it works. I have watched parents show up who have grown children who are addicts, who have grown children who are really lost and really depressed. And as soon as I work with them to pull back and let go of the energetic contract that they're holding for that child can shift, because everybody around us is a mirror for what we're holding. And so if we're holding on to the responsibility that we need to fix for everybody else, we're going to keep inviting people into our lives that we need to fix.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's like the saying, doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, is the definition of an insanity. And when you until you wake up and realize that these experiences, people, etc., that you're bringing into, that you are consciously bringing them into your life, and either you learn the lesson and you move forward and you attract something, manifest something different, or you continue to manifest that situation until boom, again, you wake up and realize. And that's happened for me in my life over and over until I was like, whoa, okay, we could just use the pharmaceutical pursuit. I mean, true, now pharmaceutical drugs are necessary in certain cases, certainly, but it's not the end all be all to true and full health and wellness. And I say this, I mean, I would have been a dynamite drug rep, the job, but what I was selling,
the values,
was so out of line with my values, my core values, etc., that I was not going to get that damn job until, no matter how many managers wanted me on their team, no matter how many people were praying at my mama's church and everybody was so excited. I'm just going to get it. You're going to get this one. You're going to get this one. I mean, and it was like, whoa, no, that's not,
it's not in alignment. Yeah.
Exactly.
And we can intuitively, all of us can feel when we're pursuing something that's not in alignment. But oftentimes, and I describe it for me because I'm an empath, so everything is a feeling, right? So that's how I start to describe anything. So you get used to that if you talk to me very often. But you feel it in your heart space as a contraction, as a tension.
Yes.
Or it like a punch in the gut, like, I just have a really bad feeling that this isn't what I'm supposed to do. But often the ego and the mental body, the mind, overrides that because there's some expectation that we've put out there of what success looks like.
Right.
And I coach a good bit of people on doing, being heart-centered in their business. And I guide business owners in developing that sometimes. And what I've been noticing is that the businesses that I think are going to really succeed going forward are those that are coming from that heart-centered, passionate place. Right. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're in alignment with it and you're in passion in it, you're going to be successful. The money will come, the abundance will flow, things will happen. But the more that you try to push that rock up the hill, it's really just the universe trying to let you know, hey, you're going in the wrong direction.
Right.
And for me, when I was in the corporate space, it was actually really aligned with me. I love technology. Yeah. And so when everybody had to go online, I was already on top of all of that because it was really easy for me and I like it. But now what I say is that was preparing me to understand business, which I need to have.
Yes.
It was preparing me to be around people that are still in the corporate space and support them, which I do all the time. I call them 101ers that are just getting into this. And it was there to help me learn, a bit more about who I was. Yeah. And as soon as I made the commitment that I could be something else, the universe was like, okay, she doesn't need it anymore.
Done.
Right. And the universe will always build you a bridge. So if you feel like, because a lot of people that I'm working with right now don't feel like things are in alignment for them. They have come out of this pandemic experience and realized, man, I just really don't like my job and I'm bored or I'm not fulfilled. And they come to me and they're like, well, I don't know what I want to do. And I always start with, okay, well, what makes you happy? Right? What things in your life make you happy and how can you lean into that more right now and not focus on it being an income stream until it becomes one?
Right. Focus on the why. What is your why? Why do you want what you want?
Yeah. And when that happens, it's almost like a switch flips in their
Yeah.
being. And they go
Mhm.
from this idea of being in this victim place where
Mm.
they have no power, they have no control, to being able to control and be empowered in one thing, right? They can do
Absolutely.
more of what brings them joy, and that will eventually lead them to their path. It always does. And the other thing that I'll say about that, which is really interesting, is that normally the parts of us that we dislike the most, so what I would call the shadow aspects,
Mhm.
are where our zone of genius is.
Mhm.
So for me, control is a big thing in my field because I'm an empath. And I
Mhm.
always wanted to control everything that was happening around me by transmuting that energy through my body. But now I use control in a very different way where I can hold space and allow somebody to move through like really deep stuff, really, really deep
Mhm.
stuff, and hold space for them and allow that energy to flow out while controlling that whole situation in
Mhm.
holding that space. And so for a long time before I made, I guess, made nice with my control stuff, it was really overt in my field,
Yeah.
and I was doing it in all the wrong ways. And so one of the fastest ways to figure out where your zone of genius is to look at what you don't like about yourself and bring that into balance by loving it, which is something nobody ever talks about, right? They always say, okay, well, you need to do shadow work, but it's never in the context of this might be something important for you.
Right.
And so when you start to love those aspects of you and you start to say, okay, well, what if this is good? When
Mhm.
is it good for me to be in control? How does that help me?
Mhm.
Then we can start to bring that in as a part of our purpose driven life.
Right.
And that is a huge game changer because it takes somebody who maybe like is studying to be like a health coach, right?
Yeah.
But if you're studying to be a health coach and you just do what you learned in your studies
Right.
and you haven't adopted that thing that makes you you,
Mhm.
that and really started to love the quirky aspects of you that
Yeah.
create your genius, then you're not going to attract all of the clients that you need to attract. And I'm sure that's the case for you, Stephanie. I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I mean, got my certification, in 2016, and I was like, "Oh, now I'm doing that," or, which is in line with my core values, what I've been doing for myself for,
Mhm.
since 91 or 92, whenever it was I started the journey to health and wellness. And it's like, and then it's like, well, no matter what I do, I mean, I was attracting clients, but not the plethora of them that I felt
Mhm.
like that I want to help, because I've been doing this for myself. I'm a walking, talking billboard,
Mhm.
and it's like, but again, just, and then creating Deepa Rick and Licious. And you're right.
Mhm.
It's like that quirky, that, because I was such a quirky child. I was such an imaginative child. It was bringing all that, not just
Mhm.
being so corporate about, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'm going to teach people this and then their lives are just going to be better, you
Yeah,
know?
we have to kind of release some of the seriousness. And that's hard
Mhm.
for us, many of us,
Yeah.
because a lot of that light comes from our inner child, and
Yeah.
he or she has been so repressed and suppressed because of
Mhm.
all of the different things that we experience growing up. I mean, if you
Mhm.
look across everything, every structure that we participate in, government, the financial industry, the school system, the medical system, all of these different systems are really set up to limit,
Right.
right? And so, one of the things that we're experiencing as a collective right now is a breakdown of our relationship with those structures, and we're starting to unwind from some of them. And that's why we're seeing these things like the GameStop
Mhm.
financial services, like stock market thing that happened
Mhm. Yep.
recently.
Mhm.
And all these different things that are happening where people are challenging the status quo, it's to kind of wake people up, right, to the
Right.
realization that they don't have to just sign up for that control structure, that they can separate from it and they can build something new. And it doesn't mean that everything that we have today will not exist in the future, but
Right.
it will be birthed anew in a new way.
I call it planting seeds. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I remember the last time you did a workshop was right before, no,
Mm-hmm.
actually, well, I think it was right before the pandemic or before the
Mm-hmm.
stay-at-home order. And I just remember you talking about a specific situation, and like the light that is shed on the controversy that actually needed to happen, the
Yeah.
explosion, the dichotomy in energy in order to evolve and move that energy and bring about the new and the dismantling, or not even necessarily the dismantling, but the opening up and creating new structures, new ways of thinking, new ways of being. So we can, because we're continuously evolving. Staying in that place of mediocrity and stuck is not, it's not doing anything for anyone. So what we think is bad or negative is necessary to create that explosion to move us forward.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the hardest things with unity consciousness is that everybody's like, well, this person is doing this and I'm so angry about that.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, how do you hold space for that? And I say, well, everything is happening in our highest good, always.
Yes.
And that's a real like kitschy thing to say, but it's true. If you look back, you can always put it together like that. But when you're in it, it doesn't feel like it.
Of course not. And we were talking about that right before we went live. Ed, you are familiar with Ariana Huffington?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I remember seeing her do a talk one time. I think it was a TED talk, and she was talking about, her quote was, always see the universe as rigged in your favor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've shared that quote. Like, that was just amazing and so true. So you want to do a meditation with my audience?
Yeah, I thought I could give a little taste of what I do
Yes.
for everybody and just bring in some unity consciousness. And I know a lot of your followers probably are concerned about their physical health. And so I thought we could do a little bit of just relationship healing with our body. Because one of the things that's been coming through, so every month I do an energy update that I put on my YouTube channel, and then those themes get pulled into all of my teachings and my workshops. And one of the themes of this month is tuning into our body and trusting our body. And if we have a lack of trust in our body is a representation of our masculine energy. So is our mind. Those are our two masculine elements. If we have a lack of trust in our body, we will have a lack of trust in the masculine, whether that's people or structures, right? Because a lot of our structures are masculine. So if you're having trouble with trust, one of the easiest ways to begin to shift that is to start to work on your relationship with your body. So I thought I could take people through just a quick little activation to help with that. Okay?
Sounds wonderful.
All right. So as long as you're not operating heavy machinery or driving, you can close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths. And as you breathe, really focus on dropping into your low belly. So our body elemental, or our subconscious body processes, exist in our low belly, in our sacral chakra, which is just below the belly button. And so as we breathe into that part of our being, what we're really doing is drawing attention into those subconscious things. And the reality is we have control of every aspect of our being at all times if we want it. And you can think of your body and all of the cells within your body as individual little soldiers waiting to be told what to do. And so what I'd like everybody to do as they breathe is just imagine growing a root system from the base of their spine down into the earth, almost like you're turning yourself into a tree trunk. And as you breathe, just allow whatever tension, stress, discomfort, anxiety, or uncomfortable emotion that you're holding that is ready to release, just allow that to flow out of your being down to the earth. And one of the things that's happened in the last year is we've all become very ungrounded because we've been in trauma response. Every single one of us has hit a trauma response at some point in the last year with everything that's gone on. And so the fastest way to drop in is to do just what we're doing right now, breathing in and growing that root system down into the earth. And then what I want you to do is choose some part of your being that you're not in trust with. So if you have a creaky shoulder, or maybe you have a thyroid condition, or maybe you have a stomach thing going on, and draw your attention and awareness to that part of your being. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my team to start to open up a channel of unconditional love. And I'm going to ask them to begin to flood that in for everybody that is viewing this, everybody that is listening to this in the future. It doesn't matter when you're seeing this or hearing this. And imagine that you can open up the crown of your head, and we're going to allow that unconditional love to pour into your body. You can see this, if you're a visual person, as light, beautiful, bright white light flowing into your being. And with your intention, and all it takes is your intention. If you can't visualize it, I just want you to feel it or intend it. Allow that light to come into the part of your body that you're not in trust with, that you are fighting against. And imagine as that light comes in that it is surrounding that part of your being in unconditional love. And we're going to begin to transmute whatever density is there. And so that density may be an emotional block, it may be a trauma, it may be an injury, a physical injury. And we're just going to continue to breathe into that part of our being. And some of you that I'm feeling that are watching and listening to this have some heart stuff going on, meaning that you're a little closed in the heart chakra. So see if you can also allow that heart to open into this frequency of unconditional love. Source is love, and we are source. And so by default, we are love at our core. And as that flows in, you can allow that to move into all the parts of your being. Sometimes I like to give it a color and just see that color floating through my entire body. And we're just going to let this energy run for just a few moments here. Just really opening up. If there's emotion coming up, I encourage you to honor it and allow it to flow. Because sometimes the fastest way to release something is to just let the tears fall. And so just be in this space of openness. We're just going to be here for another 30 seconds. If your mind is wandering, it's okay. Just come back to your breath. And as that light comes in and that energy is transmuted, we're going to visualize that anything that is dense is just being released from your field down into the earth. But also what's happening here is we're bringing love in. We're also bringing that love through our body down into Mother Earth and creating a connection, a conscious connection. So many of our world's problems could be solved if we were all more connected to Mother Earth. And so what you might notice if you do have a connection with her that you've already been cultivating is that she sends a pulse of love back. And so now you're receiving unconditional love, not only from above the head, but from below the feet. And all of that will come into the body and be received and anchored into the heart. And the heart will continue to expand the more you do this practice. And so just take a deep breath wherever you are. And think of a memory or a person, a place, or a thing that brings you joy and makes you happy. And let that flood your system. Shift yourself from the inside out. Shift your frequency to shift your life. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
That was awesome.
The fastest way for me to explain what I do is just to do it.
Right, exactly. How does everybody feel? Siobhan was saying, I do see them in their wholeness. She's into angels, and thank you. She says she's definitely into the woo-woo. Jacqueline says glass full. And Siobhan says, yes, Katie, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and my audience.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Well, guys, I am, again, thank you all for being here. And every way in which to get a hold of Katie Jo, follow her, be a part of her, like her page, etc., be a part of her Facebook, no, not Facebook group, but
Facebook page, yeah. My
yes,
YouTube
Facebook
page, all that
page.
stuff's out there.
Like I'm tongue-tied now. I'm so at peace. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. But Siobhan says, thank you so much, Katie. And she says, I felt that. Yes, absolutely. Well, all right, guys. And again, thank you all so much for your continued daily votes. Today is 2 for 1 hero votes. And, you know, the proceeds going to that wonderful charity, Feeding People, Feeding America. And I'm not going to take you out, Katie. I'm just like, I usually end with like the person. But guys, thank you so much. Tune in tomorrow. Siobhan and I are going live 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12:30 Pacific for food therapy. And we're going to be making this amazing bean salad. Katie Jo's had it.
It's really good. One of my favorites.
Yeah, and you cannot add too much cumin. All right, guys. Later.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, you're so welcome.